boys and girls. This is Ms. Kathy of Kathy's Kids Storytime. I'm so glad you could join me for this special series of Bible stories on the life of Jesus. Our focus this week at Carolina Camp Meeting for Kids is Fix Your Eyes on Jesus. It is said that by beholding, we become changed. In all of these stories, the characters who beheld Jesus, who fixed their eyes on him, were changed. In these stories, you will hear of familiar Bible characters. The storyline is based on the Bible accounts, but there are some character names that you will not have heard before. That's because the Bible doesn't give their names. I have given them names to help you visualize them as real people. There are other aspects of their lives that I have written into the story also to help you imagine what life might have been like. The main point of these stories is that all of these people fixed their eyes of faith, their hopes on Jesus. He heard their pleas of faith, their prayers to him, whether they were thought or spoken, and blessed them richly because of it. Jesus will hear you too. I invite you to fix your eyes on Jesus, to trust Jesus with your life. Say yes to Jesus and invite him into your heart. If you keep your eyes on him, he will lead you on an amazing life adventure that is just the beginning of spending eternity with him. Won't you start now? I hope you enjoy these stories. Ahlai, Gentile woman of faith. Ahlai, a Gentile woman of Syrophoenicia, gently straightened up and rubbed her sore back. She had been folding her fabric in neat bolts, preparing the display in her market stall. It was another hot summer day in the great city of Tyre. She had traveled before sunup from her town to come and set up her wares in her market stall. At this morning hour, when people came to market, there was still some shade left under a nearby tree. She looked up as a small group of women she did not know came by looking for a piece of fabric for a new tunic. "Greetings! My name is Ahlai," she said brightly. "May I help you find something? What kind of fabric are you looking for? I have a nice array of fabric from different places, exotic places, as far away as Egypt, Rome, and Jerusalem, among others. And we even have some woven fabric right here from our fine city of Tyre." Take your time. And while you are looking at my fabric, I must tell you a story," she said with an air of mystery. Ahlai settled herself on a small wooden stool she kept nearby. While the women looked at the fabric, fingering each bolt, they stopped their talk amongst themselves to listen to her story. "As I said, my name is Ahlai, which means one who pleads. I have been an idol worshiper all my life, and I have been taught that there are many gods, so many that I can't keep track of them all. I have spent much time and effort pleading for this god or that one to help me. As you know, one of our best-known gods is Baal, a well-known god of fertility who provides livestock and rain and dew to grow crops. Before I tell you my own story, I must tell you about a curious story that I heard once about Baal that happened many years before in the land of Israel. Though Ahab was the king of Israel, and he should have been worshiping the one God of Israel, Ahab married Jezebel, who worshipped Baal. She had a temple built in honor of Baal, and she had 450 prophets of Baal and 400 prophets of Asherah brought into the temple. One day, at the bidding of the one God of Israel, Elijah the prophet came to King Ahab and told him there would be neither dew nor rain for the next several years until he gave the word. Then he escaped to the Kerith brook, where his one God had ravens feed him bread and meat each morning and evening. When the brook dried up, the Lord told Elijah to go to the village of Zarephath near Sidon, north of here, where a widow would feed him. When he arrived, she was picking up sticks to make a last meal for herself and her son. Elijah asked her to bring him a cup of water. Then he persuaded her to make him a bite of bread too. Though she had only a handful of flour and a little oil left in the bottom of a jug that she was preparing to use to make a last meal for herself and her son, she trusted the promise of the one God that he would always provide enough flour and oil in her containers until he should send rain and the crops grow again. So she made bread for Elijah first. The one God provided all that they needed just as he had promised. But one day her son became sick and grew worse and worse until he died. The woman cried out to Elijah, and he took her son and cried out to the one God, who heard Elijah's prayer and revived the boy to life once again. Sometime later, the one God told Elijah to go to King Ahab and tell him to have all of Israel meet him at Mount Carmel, along with the 450 prophets of Baal and 400 prophets of Asherah. Elijah challenged the prophets of Baal to call on their God, to prove that he was God by sending down fire from heaven. But though they called to him all day long, no fire came down from heaven. Finally, the prophet Elijah called on the one God to send down fire to prove that he was the true God. This God not only sent down fire, but sent rain on the land after there was no rain for 3 years. "Now here's where my story comes in," said Ahlai, pointing to herself. "I have been unhappy because none of the multitude of gods I have worshipped have answered my many prayers for my daughter who has been attacked and possessed by an evil spirit. I have brought all kinds of offerings to please those gods made of stone, but nothing I do seems to have made any difference. My daughter is suddenly attacked and thrown on the floor, or thrown from her bed, or batted about like a ball. She has not been able to get any relief from her suffering. Here in the marketplace, I hear news from people traveling from far and near. I had heard amazing stories about a Jewish man named Jesus who healed people of all kinds of diseases, even casting out evil spirits. One day not long ago, I heard that Jesus had left Galilee and had been seen in our city. He was trying to find some rest away from the crowds of people who followed him almost constantly. Now, I know the attitude of the Jews toward Canaanites who worship idols. They don't want anything to do with us. But I figured that if this Jesus was willing to touch and heal people of all kinds of diseases, even untouchable lepers and those possessed by demons, that he must have a kind, caring heart. I had even heard stories that the God of the Jews was going to send a Messiah to save his people, and some people thought this Jesus might be the Messiah. Because of what I had heard about Jesus, I determined to go to him immediately and present my daughter's case in person. I did some asking around and found out that Jesus was staying in a certain home. I decided that even though he was a Jew and I a Gentile, I would go there and ask him to heal my daughter. When I arrived at the home, Jesus was not alone. His disciples, who had traveled from Galilee, were with him. I saw their faces change when they saw me, a Gentile, coming to speak with Jesus. But I was not going to be stopped. As soon as I saw Jesus, I fell at his feet and pleaded with him to heal my daughter, to cast out the demon that was troubling her. Jesus responded in the way I would have expected from a Jew by saying, "First, I should feed the children, my own family, the Jews. It isn't right to take food from the children and throw it to the dogs." I heard his words and saw his manner of speaking, but I realized he might be testing me, for as I was watching his face, I saw a twinkle in his eyes and felt the warmth of loving kindness that he could not hide behind the cutting words. He was showing the expected disdainful attitude of the Jews, but he could not hide the love that wanted to pour forth from him. The expression on his face made me feel bold to respond with faith in spite of his words. I said, "That's true, Lord, but even the dogs under the table are allowed to eat the scraps from the children's plates." With a wide smile, Jesus said, "Good answer. Now go home, for the demon has left your daughter." I gratefully bowed low, thanked him for his kindness, and eagerly left for home. Arriving there a short time later, I found my little girl lying quietly in her bed. The demon was gone, just as he had promised. I cannot be quiet. I must tell everyone what Jesus did for me and my daughter. I know only a true God could have done this miracle for my daughter. Because Jesus has heard my request and healed my daughter, I truly believe that he is the Messiah sent by God. In our culture, as you know, names have meaning. Now, I want to change our name so we will never forget his kindness. Instead of Ahlai, which means one who pleads, I want to be called Abi, which means my Father's delight, for I know that Jesus delights in me. And I want to name my daughter Alana, which means valuable, precious. Jesus showed that she is precious to him by answering my request. I no longer need or want to worship any of the many gods that my people worship. Instead, I want to worship the one true God who loved me enough to hear my plea and save my daughter's life. I want to serve him all the days of my life.